Do you have the courage to live life as your authentic self, no matter the consequences? To those who say yes, what lengths would you go? Would you be able to do it in a world where it is normal for people like you to be beaten, harassed, and killed? Would you be willing to run to a place you've never been to with very little money and worldly possessions for a chance to be yourself? Someone who had the courage to do this is our subject of today's episode, Marsha P. Johnson. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Nix, and welcome to the Pride series, where I talk about influential queer people. A list of trigger warnings before I start. There will be talks of homophobia, transphobia, racism, and just general bigotry in this episode. I will also be talking about homelessness, sex work, police violence, and suicide. I will, in addition, be using outdated queer terms that may seem derogatory in today's standards. This is because at the time that Marsha was alive, these terms weren't derogatory. They were the vocabulary queer people simply used to describe themselves back then. If any of this stuff is upsetting to you, I would recommend not watching this video. I will also be censoring a lot of words that may get YouTube upset with me. I'm sorry if that takes away from the immersion of this video, but I really don't want to take any chances, especially since I'm not an extremely huge creator. Now that I got that out of the way, let's talk about Marsha. Marsha P. Johnson was born in 1945 in New Jersey and was assigned male at birth. She was raised Christian and continued to be one throughout her whole life. At a young age, she enjoyed wearing dresses and presenting feminine, but would stop doing so because of the bullying she received from it. Being tired of hiding who she was, at the age of 17, she decided to leave her hometown and go to New York City. The only stuff she brought with her was a bag of clothes and $15. In New York, she once again started to wear the feminine clothing she loved, and she started going by the name Marsha P. Johnson, the P standing for pay it no mind, a phrase she often used when people asked her about her gender. Because she started to present feminine, she had a hard time finding work because it was actually illegal to quote-unquote cross-dress in public at this time. So, she resorted to doing sex work, which, as a trans woman of color, was very dangerous for her. Many times she would find herself at the business end of a gun when one of her clients realized she wasn't cisgender. One time, a cab driver paid $20 for her services, and after this, shot her. The bullet caused her to have chronic pain for the rest of her life. Along with sex work, she would sometimes work as a waitress and also did drag performances. She joined a drag troupe called the Hot Peaches in the 70s. And this is what she had to say about drag. Quote, "I was no one, nobody, from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen," end quote. Most of the clothing she got for her performances, and just everyday wear in general, were from thrift shops. People who knew her always commented about how she loved to wear bright, fun colors and would often make crowns of real flowers to wear. From multiple accounts I've read and listened to, it seemed her style of choice reflected her own personality. People described her as being fun, lighthearted, and just a genuine, kind person to be around. So, I'm sure most of you have heard of the Stonewall riots. People also call it the Stonewall Revolution as well. If you don't, or you just need a little refresher on the details, here is a brief overview and background of the event. So, in the 50s and 60s, it was illegal to be gay or trans in America, which I doubt is shocking for most people, and a lot of places it still is illegal, but I digress. People could not dance with people of the same sex, and if you were caught wearing clothes that did not fit the sex you were assigned to at birth, you would be arrested. If just existing as a gay person was illegal, it is not shocking that bars catering to gay people were constantly shut down and raided. One of these bars being the Stonewall Inn, which was located in the Greenwich Village of Lower Manhattan. This bar was actually run by the mafia because the only people willing to make money from a gay bar something that was illegal, were people who were already doing illegal things. The Stonewall Inn would frequently get raided. Many of the patrons who got arrested would be assaulted by the police in various ways, and when being held in jail, would be harassed by other prisoners and cops alike. After a raid would happen, the mafia would simply open up the doors to the bar, and it would be business as usual. June 28th, 1969 was one of these days that the police decided to raid Stonewall. Things did not go as planned, though. The people inside the building were not cooperating like the police expected them to. Outside of the building, a crowd was gathering, watching as the police loaded people onto wagons that would send them to jail. Not long after, things started to get violent. People started to throw things like bottles and pennies at the cops. This violence escalated to a point that the tactical police force had to be brought in to disperse the crowd. There are way more layers to Stonewall than the details I just gave, but I just wanted to give a small overview for this video. I might do a single video on Stonewall, or how Pride came to be as a whole someday. We'll see. So back to Marsha. Many say that she was the first to fight back against the police during the raid. Some say she threw a shot glass, others say she threw a brick. This was actually not the case, and even Marsha herself states that she didn't get to Stonewall until around 2 a.m., which was well into the riot. Although she wasn't there for the start, she did eventually get there. Many who were there state she was in the front lines fighting against the police. There are also accounts stating that she climbed a light post and threw a brick at the windshield of a police car. You may be wondering where she got this brick. She actually would carry it around her in her purse as a means for self-defense, which is extremely understandable considering the sort of environment she had to live in. Although Stonewall was not the first instance of queer people fighting against police raids, and queer activism had been around way before the riot happened, this event inspired many people to start fighting for queer oppression. Two organizations that were created as a result of Stonewall were the Gay Liberation Front and the Gay Activist Alliance. Marsha participated in protests, sit-ins, etc. for both of these groups, but she grew increasingly frustrated with these organizations because of their exclusion of trans people, especially trans people of color. This is because these groups were made up of mostly white middle-class people, and a big goal that they wanted was to show that queer people were respectable, and to them, people like Marsha were not respectable, and they perceive people like her giving a bad name to the movement, so they shunned her and people like her. In response, Marsha, along with her lifelong friend, Sylvia Rivera, who was also a trans woman of color, created their own group, the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaires, or STAR. I just want to say that transvestite is a outdated term for trans people, and in this context, it's not considered an insult or derogatory to use it, but that's not the case for every instance, so I would recommend not using this term just in casual conversation. But anyways, Marsha's experience being a homeless trans kid was a unique one. There were many homeless youth that lived in the Greenwich area. One of STAR's most well-known actions was taking in queer kids who had nowhere else to stay. Marsha and Sylvia started this endeavor with housing kids in a van, where the two would make sure these kids would be given breakfast in the morning. Eventually, they were able to buy a rundown building where the kids could live. The members of STAR renovated and fixed up the place. Marsha and Sylvia continued to do work in order to pay the rent of the building. Unfortunately, they did end up getting evicted. Despite that, STAR continued to be a safe haven for queer people who were shunned by other organizations. Organizers of Pride marches would try to prevent STAR from attending, but the group would go anyways. They would not let themselves be silenced. Working with the Gay Activist Alliance and Gay Liberation Front and creating STAR resulted in Marsha becoming a prominent figure in queer activism in the 70s. During the AIDS epidemic, Marsha joined an activist group dedicated to helping those with the illness known as ACT UP. She would also go to hospitals and sit with those who were dying of the disease, so they weren't alone. Because of her job as a sex worker, Marsha eventually was diagnosed with HIV around 1990, and I just want to preface that people who have AIDS first contract HIV and then if it's not treated, which at this point there weren't really great treatments for HIV, this illness would develop into AIDS. And Marsha was very open about this diagnosis and urged people not to be afraid of those with the disease. In July of 1992, Marsha's body was found in the Hudson River. The police quickly ruled it as a suicide, but people close to her argued that Marsha had never been suicidal. Many suspected foul play to be involved, and in 2012, her case was reopened. Unfortunately, not much information could be found by the time it was reopened, and her death was changed from suicide to undetermined. 1960s America was not kind to people like Marsha. Even modern-day America is not kind to people like her, but now there are way more people willing to be vocal about the issues people like Marsha face. If I was born during the time that Marsha was alive, rather than the one I am now, I don't know if I would have had the courage to be myself in the way Marsha did. I would like to think I would have, but in actuality, I can't be sure I would. I cannot imagine the stuff she went through just to exist. People like her, though, fought so that in the future, people like me would have it easier, and I will forever be indebted to the fighters that came before me. I hope you learned a thing or two in this video. I have more lined up for the month of June, and I hope to see you in the next one.